Thank you. It's great to be back with this gathering once again. As you can see from my slide there, I give the updated excuse me, aims for the project as well as the updated chapters. There's been a slight condensation due to what one learns along the road, shall we say. And in particular, I've done more expanding in the middle of the project related to conscience and conscientious practice. Right now, thus far, I have initial drafts of the first two chapters and have the background work prepared for the middle two chapters, and writing on that will begin this summer. What I thought I would do though right now is to make about 5 observations that I've been thinking about in terms of what really stands out as I've tried to work through this project, which is a book length writing task. And the first is to say that I'm looking backward to traditions such as Aristotle's view of phronesis and Aquinas' view of prudence, and basically using those traditional insights and applying them in the context of modern medical practice. And so the first observation I make is that, in my understanding in the context of medicine, wisdom is fundamentally teleological. There needs to be an end, a telos, or a goal towards which the action in practical wisdom is pointing. And that's a fundamental insight that leads to this whole notion of goals of care, which is a very significant part of my empirical research right now in various clinical contexts. The second point is that wisdom, as I understand it, in medicine needs to be normatively based, that there needs to be a wider context of ethical value and ethical understanding, if not even ethical theory, to understand where this one particular virtue of practical wisdom, where it fits. The third is that wisdom is context-bound in the setting of medicine. And by that, I point to really 3 directions or priorities of ethical value. And so the first, naturally, is the patient. So the patient is one sort of direction, but then the self, the physician's or clinician's self is the second, and then society is the third. And on those notes, I'll just peel back the onion skin a bit on each one. With respect to the patient, if there's anything true about practical wisdom traditionally, it's that you have to know the circumstances, the particular circumstances of the situation, and in this case, of the patient involved, a fullness of that understanding. With regards to the clinician self, the role of conscience has become increasingly clear to me, but if there's anything I've learned about conscience is that if you're ever talking to someone about it, make sure you ask them what they mean by it, and then tell them what you mean by it, because people mean a lot of different things by it. One general, if I can be brief about it, take on conscience, as I understand it, has to do a lot with integrity, the integral relating of your different parts of yourself together, so an integration of the whole. And then and that also connects very much to the notions of virtue. So the relationship between virtue and conscience is something that I'm wondering about quite a bit right now. Then with respect to society, the notion of professionalism as relating to the so-called, with small s and small c, the social contract between a profession and the society it serves is something that also sort of broadens out the terrain of concern in terms of where understanding of wisdom may come from. And that leads me to the fourth observation, and that has to do with being candid about pluralism. Pluralistic values, I know that phrase means different things also to each one of us, but there is a sense in which these 3 directions, to the patient, to the clinician self, and to society, set up a pluralistic sort of constellation that will, of course, raise tensions, but it also shares a certain amount of accountability in terms of what actually gets done in this professional context of medicine. The fifth observation has to do with motivation, and that is my understanding of Aristotle and others who have written in the virtue tradition, is that part of practical wisdom is it's not enough to simply know and understand and judge, but now you must be motivated to take that final step and actually do. And that will also, of course, connect to other virtues if one takes a virtue ethics approach, say, for instance, even the virtue of courage. Do you have the guts to now do what you have just said, or you would advise someone else to do now, will you do it when it's your turn? Along these lines, then, when I was working after finishing up drafts of the first 2 chapters, I thought that I would take a side effort and write a single sort of paper-length piece on this question of clinical judgment, because the more I read about clinical judgment, the more I realized it sounds so much like practical wisdom. And what I did, though, was bringing goals of care along with clinical judgment, as well as the normative basis of ethical reasoning, trying to fill out an understanding of clinical judgment that would make it be more like Practical Wisdom, and with my interest in medical education, put together that paper, and hopefully that will be of some use. I think I saw 0, so I need to stop. Thank you very much.